Hello, welcome back to the Project Nourish podcast. You're listening to episode 10. We're your host. I'm Megan Gump, a certified nutritional therapy practitioner and Restart instructor.
And I'm Casey Poe Campbell, a nutritional therapy practitioner, licensed esthetician, and Restart instructor as well. We're here to bring you a podcast all about health, wellness, holistic nutrition, functional medicine, and non-toxic living.
As a disclaimer, topics discussed and recommendations given in this podcast are not to treat or cure any disease. We as NTPs want to discover and address your underlying health symptoms using nutritional therapy and functional medicine.
Today, we are so lucky to have fellow NTP Caitlin Crowell of Cait, What Cait Ate with us to talk all things anxiety and panic disorder. Cait is also a nutritional therapy practitioner, blogger, and Instagram influencer residing in Denver, Colorado. She helps people struggling with various health challenges find long-term relief and balance by addressing the root cause. She's obsessed with her French bulldog Denali, the mountains, and being a complete goof with her husband. Welcome, Cait. How are you today?
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm super excited about this.
Well, thank you so much for being on. So we start off with all of our guests. What are you loving right now?
Good question. I feel like something that I've been getting asked a lot on Instagram lately that's just been on my mind because of all the DMs I've been getting is all of my favorite Primarily Pure products, which is a skincare company. It's all natural, simple ingredients. And so I feel like out of all the products that they have, the ones that I've been using a lot lately are their cleansing oil for combination skin, which I use to clean my face. So I actually don't wash my face with soap unless I'm in the shower. And then the cleansing oil for regular skin, and then the everything spray I use as a toner after I do the oil cleansing. And then since Colorado is so freaking dry and I feel like my skin really needs it, I use their beauty cream, which is a tallow-based lotion that I like to put on at night. It's perfect for the nighttime because it's a little bit heavier than like a daytime skin lotion that you would want. It doesn't really mix well with makeup. So it's great for nighttime, great for Colorado, but I would say that those top three things of the Primarily Pure products have been my absolute favorite.
I love that beauty balm. I've tried it, and it makes your skin just feel so nice.
Right? It's like your skin's just like taking a big gulp of water.
Yeah, like I want to just go up to people and say, like, just touch my face. It feels so good.
Yeah, seriously though, it's so amazing.
That's awesome. I think that tallow sounds like it would just be a coat of like rejuvenation for your skin.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. I feel like I get a lot of questions about their products because it is tallow-based, at least like that beauty cream at night. I know some other tallow-based products smell pretty bad, like it smells like legit tallow, but they have theirs mixed with this herb called blue tansy, so it has a real floral smell. It smells really good, but it's not like too strong. It still has like that natural kind of smell to it. So I really like it, but that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people love their stuff. I've actually surprisingly never used anything, and I've always wanted to try their deodorant. But for a while I was making my own, and then I just got like a fragrance-free, dye-free, clean one from Sprouts. And so that's what I have right now. But I think that's my next step is I really want to try their deodorant.
It is amazing. I put it on like one day in the morning and completely forget that I like put deodorant on, and I'll go like 2 days without reapplying, and it works amazingly, and it doesn't stain clothes, and it's like the best natural deodorant I think I've ever used. And I'm not sponsored by these guys. I just like want to throw that out there. I just like love their stuff. I feel like I'm kind of harping on this, but it's seriously just the best stuff. But yeah.
Hashtag not sponsored. Yeah.
Seriously, it's kind of ridiculous we like have to say that, but you know.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Right. That's awesome.
Cool. Well, Cait, we wanted to chat with you today. You have quite a bit of experience with dealing with anxiety and panic disorder. So do you just kind of want to give us an overview of how you got into the world of the NTP-ness and just kind of how your journey all started?
Yeah, definitely. I got to put this in a nutshell here real quick, because I feel like, I'm sure you guys feel the same way, like everyone's story and your own stories is just like this long progression of different events and things happening. But for me, I was a competitive gymnast growing up. I was like crazy, had tons of energy, drove my parents insane, bouncing off the walls. I think I started walking before I was 1. And when I was like 2 years old, I walked across the top of the A-frame of our swing set outside. And I don't remember this. Like, I don't have any memories of those things happening, but it's what my parents tell me. So I was like an insane child, tons of energy. Gymnastics was kind of like my saving grace. It was where I went to, you know, go for my mind to be off, to just, it was kind of like my meditation. It was my thing. And I just freaking loved it. And I definitely, you know, looking back now, knowing what I know as an NTP, I know that I was probably overtraining at a very young age. I probably wasn't recovering or resting enough. I was definitely not eating as good as I should have been, especially working out at such a high capacity at such a young age through puberty. But yeah, so when I was about, gosh, I think like 12 or 13 years old, I was at a meet, a competition, and I don't know what came over me. All of a sudden, I just was like, I can't do this. I'm going to completely lose my mind. Ended up having my first panic attack, didn't really know what that was, kind of went about my life for another year without really having any issues. And then I had another panic attack in 8th grade when I was in school, and it scared the crap out of me. And I was afraid to tell my mom what it was. I pretty much just, I went home. I went to the nurse and was like, I'm sick. I need to go home. And there was only 1 class period left. So they were like, all right, call your mom. And I never was in the nurse. Like, I loved school. I was extremely social. It was just such a weird thing to me to be dealing with that. And I didn't really know what it was. And so long story short, it happened multiple times ever since then. And I ended up going to a therapist. I got diagnosed with anxiety and panic attacks and panic disorder. Ended up bopping around different therapists before I found one that I liked when I was young and a teenager, which is tough at that age, I think. And then fast forward to college, I had kind of overcome, so I thought, panic attacks at that point. I didn't really have panic attacks and instances of, you know, big events or issues happening with my anxiety. It was more of like a consistent daily, just random little worries about stupid things. But not panic attacks. I mean, like, I had speech classes in college. I was a pole vaulter at a D1 school in college as well. And so I just kind of went about my life. I felt like I had normal stresses, but that's when my digestion started getting really bad and started kind of dictating my life. And I was at a point where I just kind of hit a brick wall and was like, I need to do something about this, because I had gone to a GI doctor, a gastroenterologist, and went the, you know, typical conventional route, because that's all I knew at that point. I think I was a sophomore in college at this point in my story. And I went to the GI doctor, got an upper GI endoscopy, found out that I had some polyps and gastritis, which is essentially just irritation of the stomach lining. And my esophagus looked fine. I ended up not doing a colonoscopy just because for me, I felt like I just had a lot of upper GI issues. So they were like, oh yeah, this kind of sucks. It's probably because you have too much stomach acid. Take all these antacids for 3 months and get back to us and let us know how you feel. And that's what I did, because I didn't know what else to do. And thinking about that now, it's like, what the hell? Like, why would you ever just, like, it doesn't make sense. And I know you guys are on the same page with me on that, and we can totally chat about that. But yeah, so I think I went to the doctor, did the doctor route. I hit a wall with that and was like, well, this is some BS and I'm not getting answers. Like, I got diagnosed with IBS at the same time too during that appointment. And I remember thinking, like, this is not even an answer in and of itself, like telling me that my bowels are irritable. Like, why are they irritable? What does that mean? What caused this? Why didn't I have this my entire life? Is this a chronic thing? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Like, what can I do? And none of those questions were answered when I went to the doctor. It was kind of this 10-minute, you know, wiping our hands of this issue and here, take these meds to manage it. And the meds didn't do anything. It didn't help at all. And if anything, it made things worse. So I was super frustrated. And I don't know. I mean, that's actually kind of during the time when Stu and I met, my husband, and he comes from a family in Michigan that's very holistic and natural. And his mom is like such a nutrition guru. She doesn't have a proper education in nutrition, but she is brilliant. Like she's just as smart, if not smarter than I am in nutrition, and is so well versed in so much knowledge with nutrition and health and holistic living. And she's had her own health challenges and stuff. But I think when Stu and I met at that time, he was like, why don't you try to not eat gluten for a period of time? Because Stu is gluten-free and had been since he was 16. And I was like, okay, like I just started dating you. Like I don't really want to be shitting my pants on dates. Like maybe I should try to stop eating gluten. Like maybe that would be helpful. So I kind of started there, like just kind of troubleshooting on my own. And it was just really nice that Stu and I could talk about that, because that was one thing that was a source of anxiety for me, was like dating with all of these problems, with anxiety, with digestive issues. It was like, how am I going to date anyone when I'm running to the bathroom every 5 minutes? Like I didn't want to go out to eat. I didn't want, like that's just a whole other aspect of it. But Stu was so supportive during that time. And he was actually a really big catalyst of me, I think, just kind of getting into this world of nutrition and holistic health. And so I ended up going to an NTP, didn't even know what an NTP was, had I like no idea what that was, associated with or involved in. I just knew that I was going to the wife of my chiropractor, my childhood chiropractor, and she was going to help me get my health back in line in a holistic way. So I was like, sweet, let's go. So I met with her, and she just suggested that I do a paleo ancestral style diet for 3 months minimum and take all these healing nutrients and supplements from Standard Process. And I followed that to a T. I literally had a food journal for 3 months because I was like, I'm doing this. I'm jumping in with both feet. And now that I think about that, I'm like, damn, I was such a good client. Like I wish all of my clients were like that. But yeah, and so I think that was probably where I had a big turnaround, because I had this massive like, oh my gosh, my digestion is so much better. I'm sleeping so much better. I have so much more energy. And so I would say that's kind of the point that I was like, oh yeah, I think I really want to be involved in nutrition. And at the time I was studying global public health, which is a public health education which studies the health of populations as a whole, but it focuses on developing countries. So I was loving my classes, wanted to live abroad, wanted to, do all these things. And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, if I'm loving this so much, sitting in my comfortable classroom in America, what does this look like when I'm actually in this field and doing this stuff? And so kind of around the same time that I had gone to an NTP and kind of turned my health around, I decided that I wanted to go to Bangladesh for a summer by myself and work at an international research hospital. And I ended up working with women and children in the nutrition rehabilitation unit of this hospital. And I had access to go see just about everything else too, which was amazing. So I got to see like tuberculosis wards and AIDS patients and people with chronic, different digestive and diarrheal diseases. And it's just like a totally different world when you start thinking about, the health of developing populations. But I think through that experience and working internationally on that level and working with women and children that were from the slums that were still malnourished, and just watching how like simple nutrients and simple things could literally take someone from having a seizure and convulsing from hypoglycemia to being stabilized and feeling fine and in recovery within 10 minutes was mind-blowing to me. Mm-hmm. And so I got to see a lot and experience a lot there. And I think between my own experience and my own story, and then going to Bangladesh and kind of seeing nutrition function in this acute setting versus a chronic setting, which we often see in the US and in developed countries, I was like, holy shit, like this is what I need to be doing with my life. And I think my passion just was totally born out of those moments. And when I graduated, I spent a lot of time figuring out what nutrition program I wanted to do, and always ended up coming back to the NTP program, and finally was like, screw it, I'm jumping in with both feet and I'm doing this. And that's when I did NTP, and I graduated in the June 2016 class in Denver. So I've been in NTP for about coming up on 2 years here. But yeah, that's kind of my middle ground nutshell of my story, I guess.
That's an awesome story. Mm-hmm. I am a huge fan of traveling and seeing the world, and your experience that you really got to get into like the nitty gritty of a developing country, but more on the specific side of like kind of dealing with their nutrition and disease and seeing that whole side of things that you don't see when you go travel a country. I just think that that's super
Right.
cool. Like, what an interesting and awesome experience. And it's really cool when you see these other cultures that are living in a completely, totally different way than in America, and the way that they're healing people with, you know, like you said, low blood pressure and stuff like that, with just nutrients and whole dense foods and, you know, other supplements and stuff like that, whatever they were doing over there. Such a dramatic difference than, you know, how doctors were taking care of you when you went to the doctor and you had panic attacks and anxiety, and when you were given medications and just different procedures and stuff. And, you know, they were just writing you a prescription to get out the door. And it's so crazy how our worlds, you know, across the ocean are so different. So that's just super cool that you got that experience. And, you know, especially with Stu and his mom, and just having that nutrition background to kind of also, you know, I think give you a little bit of nudge into that world. It's kind of cool how we, you know, meet people and everything happens for a reason kind of thing, right?
Definitely. Oh my gosh. And it's so crazy to think about, because oftentimes Stu is like, yeah, every once in a while he'll say something like, "Hey, I'm the one that got you into this." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like you kind of are." And he says it jokingly, not like a haha, I'm responsible for what you've done, but like it's just funny to think about, because I think without him, I don't know if I would have been so adamant about being in this field. And he's just, you know, I mean, he's amazing. He's my husband. I love him to death. But it's also just like, I never would have thought that my career would have also been a byproduct of the relationship that we've had and his influence in my life and my health and everything. And like you said, it's just so insane to think about that stuff, because I mean, I think everyone kind of has their own passion and the things that they're excited about. And I think we're really doing the world as a whole a disservice if we're fighting that and not jumping into that with both feet. And I think that, you know, all the experiences that we have are definitely no accident. And I think for me, especially becoming an entrepreneur in this field, it's been tough. It's been hard. I think a lot of people on Instagram see all this, you know, fun, exciting stuff. And I get to do podcasts and I get to like hang out with Julie Bauer and do Instagram lives. And like, it's cool. It's really cool stuff, but it's also terrifying to start a business. And I think just remembering my story and going back to like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. And like, my passion is no accident and there's a purpose in this, and just regrounding myself in that is always really good to do.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get here by accident, and definitely, you know, going through school and following a degree and getting a career and, you know, what you went to school for is, I'm not going to say an easy route. I was a geologist myself and I was in that industry for a while, and it was, you know, tough, but, you know, similar to you, had a passion for, you know, nutrition and helping people, and you had already had that journey yourself. And so you just kind of jumped right in full feet. And I mean, look at what you're doing now. Look at how many lives you're touching with your story. And I think that's definitely why Casey and I wanted to have you on today, is to really, you know, your story about how you had panic attacks and, you know, some other anxiety issues when you were younger, especially just being, you know, an extreme gymnast and not, you know, fueling yourself properly. And now what you've learned, you can share that information with so many other, you know, young women and other people out there that are kind of going through the same thing and dealing with anxiety and dealing with panic attacks, and they don't understand the underlying causes or the root issues, or they don't understand how other aspects of their life really play a part of that. You know, how they're sleeping, how they're stressed out. Those are really big factors in how they feel every day. And so definitely, you know, moving into this kind of passion project that you have and doing your own business, becoming an NTP and, you know, helping other people. I mean, it's definitely people like you and people like NTPs and, you know, functional medicine practitioners that are really the, you know, new wave of medicine that's going to change people's lives. So super, super cool to hear your story. And thank you so much for sharing all the information. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem. If you guys have any questions about the specifics and nitty gritty of like the anxiety and the path and all that stuff, I'm like more than happy to answer any questions. But yeah, I'm happy to share everything.
Yeah, so I know that you've done a lot of different therapies. So I know one question for me, especially just, you know, being interested in functional medicine and like the functional lab testing. So one question that I had for you, because I know you've done different blood tests and hair tissue, you know, mineral analysis and stool tests, nutrient status testing. Oh gosh, I really, in a little bit, I want to hear more about the EFT, the tapping technique. I just thought that was so
Yeah. Yep.
interesting. Yeah, but one question for me was, going through the conventional model and, being diagnosed with IBS and gastritis. When you did those functional lab testing, like your stool tests and stuff like that, were there any underlying gut infections? Did you have any like parasites or bacteria overgrowth, or did anything come up in your test results that would have been an underlying cause of that kind of stuff?
Yes, and this is where things get really fascinating. And feel free to reel me back in if I'm like totally nerding out and getting way too sciencey.
No, we love that.
But
Yeah, I'm into it.
awesome, sweet. I do too. It's like my favorite space to function in. But so I had, oh my gosh, like you guys just mentioned, I've had so many tests done. I don't even want to think about the kind of money I've spent on testing these last couple of years. Like it's just completely absurd. But I think one of the biggest things was one of the first stool tests that I did, I found out that I had a really crappy ratio of healthy to unhealthy bacteria in my gut. And I was really bad at digesting fat. So liver, gallbladder not functioning properly. And oh goodness, what else came up? I'd been told by multiple holistic practitioners, people that do like muscle testing, things like that. So not like a solid test, but like a muscle test on the body. I'd been told by multiple people that I had parasites. And I was like, well, what the hell? Like, I kind of want to get a stool test to actually figure out if I have that. And so the stool test that I did only tested a few parasites, came back with nothing on that. Parasitology was fine, but I did find out that I had a really crappy ratio of bacteria in my microbiome. And so that was really interesting because we know that there's a massive connection to gut-brain function. And we know that we have more serotonin in our gut than we do in our brain, and just how fascinating that is. And that by weight, we have more bacterial cells than we do our own cells in our body, and just how important those bacterial cells are, and that it's healthy bacteria and that we don't have these overgrowths. And so for me, finding that out was like, bingo, like here's all the crazy shit that I've been dealing with that makes so much sense. So that was really interesting on that digestive side. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going to an acupuncturist when I first moved to Colorado, because when we moved here, my goal was like, eradicate anxiety at all costs before your wedding so you don't have a panic attack during the ceremony. That was like my single goal, I feel like, as soon as we moved out to Colorado, because I was probably at the worst I've ever been in my entire life, anxiety-wise, when we moved out here. And looking back at that time and kind of coming out of that is kind of funny. I feel like I'm like, no wonder I was like losing my mind during that time, because I was starting my business. Stu and I were living off of savings. Both of us didn't know what the hell we were doing. We had just moved across the country, like 1,600 miles away from both of our families. And Stu was working for $10 an hour painting houses. And I was like, sweet, all of my clients are out east and I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how to get more clients. So life was purely insane. We were planning our wedding. Like there was just so much going on. And now I'm like, well, no shit, I was losing my mind. So there's so many different aspects to this. But in terms of like the physical aspects, the acupuncturist that I was seeing at the time told me that I was like stuck in I was stuck in sympathetic state. I was stuck in fight or flight. I had HPA axis dysregulation. My adrenals were all out of whack. And yeah, I mean, just all the typical things that we expect to see with someone who's got anxiety and is a little bit out of whack. So yeah, all of those things to me were just kind of validating of like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is bigger than just me feeling stressed out. Like there is something physically out of balance in my body that I can kind of work at this from multiple angles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when your gut bugs are out of whack, talk about creating anxiety and panic attacks. So it's super cool that you did those functional tests and it kind of came back with that. Now, how soon after you got diagnosed with IBS and gastritis did you do those functional lab tests?
Oh man, gosh, probably way too long. So I got diagnosed, oh geez, let's see. I think 2012 would be my sophomore year of college. Yeah, 2012 was when I got my diagnosis. I started working with a NTP a few months after that. And that's when I started eating paleo, taking digestive enzymes, taking, something similar to like beta TCP that Biotics has, which is essentially just like a liver gallbladder support to make sure that the bile is properly flowing into the stomach to properly break down and emulsify fats, because I knew I had problems with that at that point. Mm-hmm. But at that point, when I started working with the NTP, I didn't have any functional testing done. It was just kind of like, here's all the crap I've been dealing with, literally and figuratively, and was like, can you help me with all this stuff? And so then that's when she was like, we just jumped into changing my diet and supplements. And that was a huge turnaround for a period of time. But I feel like I kind of tapped out with paleo because I noticed, I know this now, but I realized that I was starting to get adrenal fatigue because I was a D1 collegiate athlete training 4 or 5 hours a day, and I wasn't eating enough complex carbohydrates. And so I reintroduced rice. I started kind of tweaking my diet a little bit on my own. I was still kind of back and forth in between gluten-free and my roommates ordering pizza and being like, F it, I'm just going to have a bunch of pizza, and then feeling like crap and breaking out in hives for a few days. So I think it's definitely kind of been a process. I started getting functional testing probably 2 or 3 years ago, I would say. So probably around like 2015, once I graduated college. I definitely, at that point, my parents were kind of helping me pay for stuff. They've known all about the struggles that I've been through, and they've been so supportive and helpful. So it's been really awesome to have their encouragement and their support. And I mean, recently it's just been like out of pocket paying for all this stuff. So I think, that's kind of like a catch-22 with all of this stuff, is you want to know what's going on so you can validate it. But it is really expensive, and oftentimes these functional tests that you can't get with conventional medicine doctors, because functional testing is going to be a lot more broad spectrum and a lot more comprehensive than just a regular stool test at a conventional medicine doctor's office. Like, the tests are different, they cost more, but they're a lot more effective and a lot more telling about what's actually going on inside the body. So I feel like, probably about 3 years ago is when I started really jumping in with both feet and was like finally convinced of the holistic approach, and finally was like, all right, I'm ready to put my money down on this stuff and figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Especially like switching up your diet. Can you only imagine what your gut could have potentially been like when you were diagnosed with IBS and gastritis? Only because of the fact that, you cleaned up your diet and started taking supplements and digestive enzymes and, supporting yourself with stomach acid, and then boom, started feeling better. So I'm sure your stool test would have looked a little bit different back in the day. But yeah,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. But functional.
Yeah, I don't even want to know.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the functional lab testing makes a world of a difference, right? That's why that old saying, or I guess maybe not so old, but test, don't guess, right? And then you just figure out what's going on and you can address those issues.
Definitely. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more. We're both really curious about the emotional freedom technique that you did.
Yeah. So, oh boy, where to start? So I've been to way too many therapists. I feel like, not like way too many, like it's a bad thing, but I started having panic attacks, like I said, when I was about 12 or 13, and bounced around therapists for a while until I found someone who I really liked. So I guess that's one little snippet of like a side note of piece of advice. If anyone listening to this is struggling with anxiety, panic attacks, whatever, depression, anything, and is trying to see a therapist or is seeing a therapist, definitely shop around. Don't just settle for the first person you meet and feel bad and be like, oh, well, I met with them once and I feel like I just need to work with them now because I acted like I was going to commit. Like, no, screw that. Find the person that works best for you and shop around a little bit. And so in the process of doing that, I feel like I've just been to so many different people. And it wasn't up until this year that I went to a woman who is just so different than any therapist I've ever been to in my life. Most of my life up until this last year, I had been going to therapists who did cognitive behavioral techniques and acceptance and commitment techniques, which is essentially, if you're not familiar with therapy, it's essentially just kind of talking through the mental aspect of things and saying like, oh, you're having panic attacks. Well, let's change the way that you're thinking about these experiences, which is effective to an extent. But like, if anyone listening to this or you guys even have had a panic attack before, sometimes there's no way to talk yourself down. Sometimes your physical body, you mentally get stressed out, you're freaking out about something, which will signal your fight or flight response, and you end up having massive amounts of cortisol and adrenaline coursing through your veins. And once the physical self starts taking over that process, there's no talking that down. It's part of the autonomic nervous system. You can't be like, oh, adrenaline, could you please stop pumping into my veins and causing me to feel like I'm having a heart attack? Like you can't, there's kind of a line that you cross. There's like this bell curve that you hit. And so in that respect, when anxiety is really bad, when panic attacks are really bad, cognitive behavioral therapy, I've found personally, is not enough. It's not effective enough. And same with acceptance and commitment techniques. So ACT is essentially just, identifying the thing that you're afraid of or freaks you out, committing to putting yourself in that situation, and then coming out the other side and being like, look, I did it and I can do it again. And then I can get used to it and prove to myself that it's okay. Which, if you don't have anxiety, probably sounds like an okay thing to do. But if you do have anxiety and you've had massive panic attacks in certain situations, when that situation's over, you're kind of just like, well, F this. I made it. I'm glad I didn't die, but I am never putting myself in that situation again, because it feels like you're dying. Like it literally, you feel like someone is trying to kill you when really that's not happening, but you're physically responding in that way and you feel stuck and trapped inside yourself and you can't get away from it. And so for me, those two therapies were kind of like dead ends to a certain extent. Like they helped. And if I could stop my panic attack from happening and kind of control that bell curve from getting out of control and having that physical response, then I found those therapies to be helpful. But with emotional freedom technique, EFT, this has been like so crazily transformational for me. And so EFT essentially is, it's called tapping kind of for short. And so pretty much what it is you tap on different parts of the body. You like start at the head. There's different points on the face. There's different points on like the collarbones and the fingers and the hands. And essentially what you're doing is you're tapping on certain acupressure points and meridians in the body. So we have all these energy meridians that kind of flow. So like our thoughts and our worries and all of these things have a physical, energetic expression in our body. So for example, when people, get anxious, they might feel that in their stomach, or they might feel that in their heart, or they might feel it in these different parts of their bodies. And that's all related to our nervous system and the energy meridians that we have. And if we're anxious over a period of time and we're super stressed out, then we can hold on to these things energetically and end up being really stressed out over the course of time. Because we kind of just harbor these things in our bodies. And so it's part of the subconscious function of our brains. And so with EFT, pretty much what this does, and the way that my therapist described this to me, is that when we have thoughts or experiences that are worrisome or traumatic or are open-ended and don't really have an answer, they don't really get put into a file folder. So when we're sleeping at night, our brain is essentially taking all the experiences, thoughts, and emotions and things that we experienced during that day and kind of putting them all into a file folder. But with our worrisome thoughts, things that don't have an answer, open-ended situations, traumatic experiences, etc., when we are laying in bed at night, those thoughts don't get put into a file folder. And so the next day, it's on our mind. It's, affecting us physically, mentally, emotionally. It's kind of running through the system, going through those energy meridians, stressing us out, affecting, it's literally changing our thought patterns. And so with EFT, what this does is you tap through these things and you speak while you're tapping on these energy meridians. And it essentially is just kind of breaking up those thought patterns on a mental and physical scale. And it is taking those stressful things, those worrisome situations, and it's putting them into a file folder, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. I've never heard it described that way. The first experience that I think we ever had with tap, or me that I've ever had with tapping, was before our final written exam at the NTP. One of the instructors walked us through a tapping exercise, and it was amazing how much it just helped. Like the way that you describe it, putting everything in folders, it just kind of calmed us all down, and I was able to think so much more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's insane. You kind of almost don't believe it. Because I remember the first time that I went and got, I met with this therapist. I met with her. I kind of told her, I've been, my wedding's coming up. I've had a panic attack on a plane ride. And so I've been freaked out about getting on planes now. And I kind of had situational anxiety, but then some generalized anxiety through my life. And she was like, all right, this is what tapping is. And we kind of went through it the first time, tapped through a few worrisome thoughts. And it's crazy how we physically hold on to things, because the second time that I went into her and we went through tapping, because she'll always ask at the end of a tapping session, and it takes like a few minutes to kind of tap through everything. You like start at the head, the face, the collarbone, the hand, and you kind of clear. It's like energetically, emotionally, mentally clearing these worrisome things. And you feel it, like you're exhausted. Like I remember the second time that I went to her and we like really had a tapping session, and it wasn't like kind of learning how to do it. I like cried. I had all these emotions, old emotions from like my childhood come up that I didn't know I was still holding on to. I was exhausted. I slept for like 2 or 3 hours, and I was so thirsty. And it's insane that like there's this massive mental, physical connection that I think a lot of us don't pay attention to, and conventional medicine doesn't look at that. But like our mental health and the way that we talk to ourselves, the way we think about things is drastically connected to our physical health and how everything's functioning in the body. But so that was like a huge, huge eye opener for me.
Yeah. So, Cait, can I ask you, like, what are some spots that are like sweet spots for you, especially for, maybe someone out there listening that have these panic attacks, or, when anxiety starts coming on? Because I can even see this being something that you can use like driving in a car, like when you're getting stressed out, or if you're just having like a crazy day, just kind of taking a moment to like tap it out. I mean, you can totally, do a little activity like that, I'm assuming.
Definitely. Yeah. You can definitely do this on your own. And I definitely have in times of, if I'm about to do some public speaking, or I'm about to get on an airplane ride, or like things that I know are going to stress me out, and I anticipate that. So one thing that's been really helpful for me is there's an app called the Insight Timer app. It's a meditation app.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just said app 50,000 times in that sentence. But it's an app that has a bunch of meditations on there. And so there's one that focuses on the energy of the body. I totally forget what it's called. I'll have to look it up and let you guys know if you can add it to the podcast notes. But it really focuses on harnessing your own energy and focusing and kind of creating like a bubble of your own energy around yourself, so that you're not taking on the stresses of everything around you. So I think doing that meditation for me has been really helpful if I'm anticipating feeling anxious, or if I'm already feeling anxious and just ungrounded and not myself. That's been really helpful, just to kind of tap into my own energy center and re-center and ground myself. Another thing is just grounding in general, like literally getting outside barefoot, walking in the grass, laying in the grass, being outside in the sunshine. There's something so powerful about reconnecting with the earth and being in the sunshine that is just so supportive and so grounding and centering. So I know that's not like possible in a car. I mean, maybe if you want to like pull over and jump out, you could do that. But another thing I think would be just kind of changing your mindset. So for me, this has probably been the very hardest piece of everything, is changing the way that I think. So with anxiety and panic attacks, and I think with depression too, and really any other mental health issue, is just you get so used to thinking the way that you're thinking that it's just second nature. Like, for example, I went up to Vail a few weekends ago with my husband and some of his colleagues, and my first thought was like, well, Stu had to go to the ER last time we were at Elevation, and he got a migraine, and I was so scared in that moment, and I was like driving down the road really fast, and like I don't feel great at Elevation, and what if I have to go? Like you start these thoughts, and even just thinking about going to Vail, I was like, I'm going to feel like shit when I'm in Vail, which we tell ourselves those things. And I'm a huge believer in what we think about expands, and what we focus on expands. And so for me, it's kind of reshaping that into something that my therapist told me to focus on, is when I'm starting to have those thoughts, just cutting them right when they start happening. And so kind of a way to do that for me that's been really helpful is saying to myself, what if this turns out better than I've ever planned or imagined? And focus on like the other great times that I've had in those situations that are more likely to happen than the thing that happened one time that I'm really worried about. And just kind of focusing on that. And then another thing that I think is just really typical and like old school, but it works if you can kind of bring yourself down to this point, is breathing. And for me, alternative nostril breathing, whatever that is, that's been really helpful, where you kind of have like your fingers on your forehead and use your nose and your pinky to kind of block out different nostrils and breathe through the different nostrils. Alternatively, that's been really helpful for me. Another breathing technique I think is 888, which when you're really losing your shit, I feel like makes you feel like you're going to die because you can't hold your breath that long. So the 888 thing is breathe in for 8 counts, hold your breath for 8 counts, and exhale for 8 counts. So if I'm like in a moderate state, like I'm starting to creep up on that anxiety scale, that's really helpful. If I'm having a panic attack, that makes me feel like I'm going to pass out. So I think it just kind of depends where you're at on that scale. But one thing, if I am really losing my shit with breathing, in terms of breathing, is doing like a 4 to 6. So breathe in for 4 breaths, exhale for 6 breaths, and kind of skip that holding the breath thing. Because sometimes that just doesn't feel good when you're really feeling like you're losing your crap. And I think just always telling myself, because I had a panic attack so bad this last summer that I literally thought I was having a heart attack. I lost feeling in my arms. I felt dizzy. I couldn't catch my breath. I literally like laid on the ground, took all my clothes off, and was like, I'm going to die. We need to go to the ER right now. Like, it was the most intense, crazy panic attack I've ever had in my life. And I think going through that experience and going to the ER and ended up going to a cardiologist and getting heart tests done. I think just knowing that my heart is fine and it's functioning fine and I have a really healthy heart and a really healthy body, and knowing that like when I do lose my shit, reminding myself that like I'm not going to die. This will not kill me. It's just very uncomfortable. And if I can endure this uncomfortable moment, then I'm going to be fine. And I just need to kind of settle in and not be afraid of it and not fight it. And I think that's probably the number one thing that I could suggest to people is learn how to, like, of course, being uncomfortable is not enjoyable. Like, you're never going to enjoy it. But I think learning how to sit with it and just being okay with being uncomfortable and saying like, you know, this is happening to me. I'm okay. I'm not dying. I'm not going to die. It's just uncomfortable. And like, it's going to pass. This feeling will go away. And it's just a feeling, and trying not to attach yourself to those physical feelings because they're not true necessarily. You know, it's the body overreacting to a stimulus in a way that it would react if you were actually dying, but you're not, like, and it's going to pass. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mind is a very, very powerful thing. And so, especially in, I mean, it's hard for me to speak because I've never had a panic attack, like a really hardcore panic attack, but controlling your thoughts as much as you can and definitely doing like the breathing. I mean, I can just imagine makes a world of a difference, because I know we've done that alternate nose breathing with your pinky in yoga. Like I've done that in some classes, and I just even know the feeling that it gives me when I do it. Then I just feel like whatever state I came in, even going to yoga class, you kind of just get into a different vibe when you're there. But I remember doing those. Yeah, I remember doing those specific breathing exercises. And when you're focusing or even just like alternating your nostrils, I don't know what exactly it's doing with the energy, the way it's spinning it around in your body, in your head, in your chest, whatever it might be, but it totally puts you into like a different place. So taking the time to kind of figure out, taking the time to figure out what works for you, whether it's tapping, whether it's a different breathing exercise, if it's going on a freaking walk or whatever it might be, definitely kind of getting into your zen as much as you can when you are feeling these like onsets. So those were super good tips. I actually think I'm going to adapt some of those when I start feeling stressed out when I'm driving here in Houston traffic with the alternate nose breathing. I'm going to bring that on, some other stuff. So
yeah, and
definitely.
I think that reminded me, I used to do that before races, like triathlons and stuff, and I'm going to start racing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I totally need to do that again. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I mean, this is, of course, yeah. And I mean, it is stuff that's good for everyone. I mean, whether you're stressed or anything really. And I mean, for me, at least in my perspective and like understanding and experience with panic attacks and anxiety, is that it's often just an expression. It's like the body saying like, I cannot do anymore. And since you won't stop, I'm going to make you stop. And it's kind of this like everything coming to a head, where like even the tiniest of little things will push you over the edge. And to me, I think what I've learned is that I kind of have these cycles and these patterns to my anxiety and panic attacks of like when I have too much going on, or I take on too much, or I say yes to too many things and I'm not getting enough alone time and quiet time and time to kind of process my life and my experiences and take time to journal and write things down or have a conversation with my husband or, you know, whatever it is to kind of get out in front of that stuff is so important. You know, whether you have panic attacks or not, like life is busy, life is stressful. People are doing more than they ever have before. And genetically, we haven't changed much from cavemen. So we're not created to be in a go, 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 fight or flight, sympathetic state all the time. And it is really detrimental. And I think that's why we are seeing so much anxiety, depression, and I mean, it's connected to so many things, as you guys well know. It's digestive health, mental health, physical health, the food that we're eating. It's so interconnected. But I think that just the most simple aspect of like managing stress and breathing and getting outside and recentering yourself, even though that sounds like hippy dippy shit, like it's some real stuff. And I thought it was hippy dippy shit, like up until last year when that was like literally the only thing that helped me and the only thing that made things better.
Yeah, I mean, our state of society that we are in with this, like, go, 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 driving in the car, eating food as fast as you can, not cooking for yourself, being stressed out about work, working way too much, working all the time, not spending enough time with your family. I mean, all of these things are why people are having the health problems that they're dealing with today. And all of this stuff that you're talking about, the breathing, the getting outside, the getting some vitamin D, the taking off your shoes, walking around in the grass, hanging out with your dog, hanging out with the people you love. I mean, that stuff is not woo-woo. That is the stuff that makes us human. And that is the stuff that at the end of the day is, you know, going to bring us peace and sanity and, you know, make our level of living just a higher quality. So people really need to take the time to get more connected with that kind of stuff, because I think it's something that unfortunately a lot of people have lost touch with. I mean, I know a lot of people nowadays aren't even really cooking for themselves anymore, and they're just relying on other people to make their food or pick it up or do whatever. And I mean, that is just like human nature. Like, that is who we are, you know, hunting animals, growing plants, and people are so removed from that. And they're so removed from these other things that we should be doing that, you know, we wonder why we're all stressed out. We wonder why people are having anxiety and panic attacks. And it's like, I mean, you got to look at the life that you're living. And if you're having these symptoms, then, you know, you've got to get into these quote unquote woo-woo things, which are not woo-woo. They're going to bring you this happiness and, you know, this peace and calmness that, you know, you're looking for. So it's definitely not woo-woo
Definitely.
stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's awesome. Cait, real quick, do you have anything exciting coming up or stuff that you want to tell our listeners about?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think. So Jen at Just Be Kitchen and I are planning a fun event we'll talk about it more in the next couple of months here, but I think probably like sometime in May, we'll be having an event at Just Be Kitchen here in Denver, and it's going to be focused on women and wine and wellness. And so we're still forming everything, but that's coming up, date to be announced in the future, but really excited for that event. And it's just going to be a really good time for some of the girls and ladies in Denver to kind of connect. And I think one thing that I've learned being in this field and kind of connecting with other people on social media and stuff is that everybody just really wants a community to kind of sink their teeth into. And I mean, as NTPs, we know how amazing it is to have that tribe of people that are our people where we can have these conversations, but there's so many other people that are not NTPs that want to have that space. So that's something that has been really on my heart this last year of just wanting to create some sort of community in Denver of women that can kind of meet, have these conversations, connect, that kind of thing. So we'll be having our first event at Just Be in about a month or two. And so I'll have to keep you guys updated on the date for that. But in terms of events, that's probably the biggest thing. I do have, let's see, I just did an Instagram live today with Julie from PaleoMG and my chiropractor, Dr. John at Apollo Soft Tissue. And I'm going to be adding the video, since it's only up for 24 hours, I'll be adding the video to my Facebook group, which is Cait 8 groupies. If you guys want to join the group. You can check out some awesome conversations and yay. So I'll be adding that video, and we just talked a lot about various levels of adrenal fatigue and how that affects not only just, our emotional, physical states, but also, our cycle and our hormones, and physically speaking, in terms of athletes and CrossFitters, what that does to the posterior chain and functionality of our ligaments and our tissues and things from a functional perspective. So it was a really awesome conversation, and Julie shared a lot about her own personal experiences with adrenal fatigue that she struggled with a few years ago, which was just really insightful and awesome to kind of get that firsthand perspective. So yeah, I'll be sharing that on my page. So I know this podcast will go out probably in the future, but you guys can jump on that group and check out that video. But I feel like those are probably like the two things right now that I feel like are good to share that are kind of going on and scheming right now. But yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I definitely want to know when the event is at Just Be, because I mean, not that I need an excuse to go there, but it's a good
always good to have an excuse to go to Just Be. It's the best.
Exactly. Megan, it is amazing.
I know. I wish I could
join.
Yeah,
you need to take a trip.
I know.
Come join the party in Denver.
One day, Cait, I'll be there, especially if there's wine and women and wellness. I'm in.
Right?
I'm all in.
Kind of like an oxymoron, but
right?
It'll be good.
Yeah, right?
It's good wine.
It's a
healthy wine.
Exactly.
There you go.
Paleo friendly.
Exactly.
That's funny.
So Cait, where can people find you?
So people can find me on my website at whatcait8.com. That's what, and then Cait is CAIT, 8ATE.com. And then same thing, whatcait8 is my handle on Instagram. Instagram is where I spend most of my time these days. My blogging has taken a backseat to a lot of the clients that I've been taking on one-on-one. So I've been working with a lot of clients on digestive health and adrenal function and fatigue and things like that. That's a lot of the people that I'm seeing right now. But yeah, I do a lot of Instagram stories, behind the scenes of my days, things that I cook, my dog, random stuff that Stu and I are doing in Denver, and food that we're eating and places we're going. And yeah, just a lot of real, blunt, honest nutrition info on my Instagram page. And I feel like that's really the bulk of what I do. I don't know. Where do you guys usually find me? I feel like those are my two big ones.
I watch your Instagram stories because you crack me up.
Yeah.
So
I second
pretty
that.
much. Yeah. Pretty much Instagram stories.
Yeah. Instagram
awesome.
Stories, anything Denali, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys. I've been thinking about starting a YouTube channel because I just would so much rather talk than spend like a day trying to hash out a blog post. So YouTube might be a thing here in the future, but for now, Instagram stories are where I am most of the time.
I dig it.
That's why we started a podcast, because we like talking better than we like writing. So
yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Exactly.
Podcasts are so hot right now too.
They're fun. And we get to have awesome guests on like you. So
yes.
Well, thanks for having me, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for
thank you so much.
Letting me share my story.
Yeah, it was awesome having you. Thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing, awesome, juicy tidbits of knowledge and information for all of our listeners out there, especially anyone, struggling with some similar symptoms like you were. And I know that, I myself and so many others out there learned a lot today. So this was awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Happy to hear it. Happy to share it. Thanks for having me on, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Cait. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Cait. We'll have to do it again soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Awesome. See ya.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. If you're interested in working with an NTP, you can further work with Megan, myself, and Casey. To learn more, find us online. You can find me, Megan Gump, at megangump.com. Not too crazy or hard to remember. You can also book a free 15-minute introductory phone consultation on my website to learn more about working with me. And you can also find me on Instagram at megan.gump.
You can find me, Casey, at caseypoe.com or on Instagram at realtalkcasey. See you there.